Good evening. Planning and Zoning Board meeting for Tuesday, June 6, 2023. It's hereby called to order. Can we have a roll call?
Board Member Hibbert Smith. Present. Board Member Dominguez. Here. Board Member Mangum. Board Member Mata.
Present.
Chairman Guerrero.
Here.
And for the record, Board Member Barnes will be running late, but he will be joining us as well. We do have a quorum. Thank you.
Please stand for the invocation pledge. Lord, we ask for your guidance in this meeting and that you help us make decisions that will benefit our city. Amen. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we get a motion for the approval of the minutes of the March 7th, 2023?
Move it. A second.
Roll call.
Board Member Hibbert Smith. Yes. Board Member Dominguez. Yes. Board Member Mata.
Yes.
Chairman Guerrero.
Yes.
Minutes passed. Thank you.
Okay, get item number 1 read into the record.
The first item on the agenda. Resolution of the Planning and Zoning Board of the City of Opa-locka, Florida, recommending approval of the building height variance for the construction metal building with a proposed height of 50 feet on the property located at 12705 Cairo Lane and identified by folio number 08212800300530 in the I-4 zoning district, providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Hear from the applicant.
Sir, you would have to go to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
My name is Gabriel David, representing International Scrap. The reason of the variance that we're asking for is because we need a roof to cover our metal, so that way the rainwater doesn't touch the metal at all when we processing, and we need in order for the equipment to be moving under the roof. That's the reason why.
Any questions?
As Mr. Lee comes up, board, I'd just like to give a little further clarification. This is Gregory Gay, Director of Planning and Community Development. This particular applicant has received some citations as it relates to Durham operations. And it is because of those particular concerns that they have asked for this particular roof application in order to meet those particular requirements that Miami-Dade County Durham has placed upon them. Also, they are asking for the variance because as it stands right now, we do have a height limitation as it relates to the zoning category that they are presently located. For them to meet the requirements for the operation, which is a scrap metal operation, and be able to move that particular type of material around, they have to use a rather large equipment, and the equipment has to be underneath that roof structure itself. That's why the roof has to be raised up in order for them to be able to do that particular operation. It is because of that they've asked for the variance to increase the height for the roof to be installed per the requirements from Miami-Dade County, Durham. Mr. Lee will give staff's recommendation and the presentation at this time.
Gerald Lee, Planning and Community Development Department, zoning official for the city. Okay, the presentation will be on the screen. Next slide, please. You know that this is a resolution for a request for a variance. That variance that they're asking for is based on the height of what is allowed in that zoning district. The zoning district permits 1 story or 20 feet. And so we need to request a change through this process for the higher height to be available. Okay, according to section 2258. Next slide, please. 2258 of the city's land development regulation. The owners of lands or structures may apply to the city for a variance. So they have to go through a process to be able to address the need for a change. Next slide, please.
I apologize. Chairman, may I?
Yes.
Just want to state for the record that Board Member Barnes has joined us at 7:15. Thank you.
And so the building height variance request, they need to provide certain provisions of the code which prevents the proposed construction. That part of the code is the fact that they need a higher building. I don't want to belabor the point, but it becomes very, very obvious that if you need a building that's higher than what the code allows, then we have to go through this process. So that's what they're doing. The existing zoning of the property is I-4. And that's where that standard is about what the height that's allowed in that section. The special circumstances or conditions or characteristics of the land, building, or structure that prevent the use of the land in compliance with the terms of this ordinance. There's nothing special about the property itself, but the requirements that Durham has placed on them to prevent contamination or the addition of contamination, or let's call it mitigation of contamination, requires that they prevent rainwater from falling on the product that their business is a part of making happen at the site for their financial benefit. And so if they have to prevent water from getting on that, as Mr. Gay stated, the machinery that they do it with is of such large volume that the height that the current code allows wouldn't allow that equipment to operate. The particular hardship, number 4, the particular hardship that would result if the specified provisions of the ordinance were to be applied to the subject property, it would prevent their compliance with the Durham requirements. So we've got to consider this to address contamination in an area where contamination is a huge problem, because this is the most intense zoning district in the city for industrial things. Scrap metal, auto vehicle parts, salvage and resale, and then the shredding of those materials. Number 5, the extent to which it would be necessary to vary the provisions of this ordinance. Well, it's very simple. We need to increase the height, and we're not looking to increase the height for all of the properties in this area, but it may be something to be considered later. But at this time, we want to just address it for this property, for the use that they have with the requirement that Durham has put on them. Number 6, a disclosure statement by the parties with at least a 5% interest in the project. That is the current owners and the business owners that are at this property site, and they are proffering 3 applications before you today. That is for the variance to allow for a higher height building in the area, a site plan that shows the construction of that building, and a development agreement to tie everything all together. Next slide, please. As I told you before, Section 2294 indicates that the building height maximum is 20 feet in this area. The property zone I-4. And again, I'm going to say that Durham is the reason for this change. It's not something that they did. It's not a fault of theirs. It's not a deficiency in their business plan. It is to make this property more compliant with environmental issues. They need this to be the case so that they can be in compliance with Durham. Next slide, please. This is the location of the property. When you know about the area of I-4 zoning, this is at the end of Cairo Lane on the east side, just before the canal. And you can see how detrimental it could be if rainwater takes away from the property the negative, corrosive outlay from the shredded metals and whatever else. It's right on the canal. And so it becomes extremely important to prevent the contamination that could be in that area. I mean, if you look at the color of the canal now, it's already something that we need to start to address. And that's why this is so important. As you can see, next slide, please. As you can see from this slide, everything that's around it is all I-4. And so if there may be in the future a need for more businesses to do the same thing, then maybe the city will consider changing the height in the entire area. But some are junkyards, some are scrap metal facilities, and some of them do a different kind of way that they operate their business that this doesn't apply to them. So we'll see if that becomes something that's important. Next slide, please. Staff recommends approval of this change because it's going to do what's most important, and that is to reduce or mitigate contamination within the city for a business that has been operating in the city so that they can continue and do what they need to do. Questions?
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Well, their business use is in compliance with the I-4 zoning, right?
Yes, sir.
Because
it's-
that's, most of the businesses around there do the same thing. So I'm thinking this is something that might need to be addressed also, because it's looking like it's gonna come up a lot, because there will be a lot of runoff into that canal, or there is.
Well, I think it is better if recycling and those kinds of things are done inside a wholly enclosed building, and that we don't do as we've done for the last 30 years, that everything is outside on ground. And it appears Durham has already taken the lead on when they come to them for their processing and approvals, that they're requiring that there be some mitigation to prevent that contamination. Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other
What is Durham recommending?
They're recommending that their operation be inside a wholly enclosed building, and the equipment that they use is very tall. It's large. So they're asking them to put that inside a building, but the building that they need to put it inside of is greater than the height that the area allows.
And if I could further clarify, Durham has asked for them to put a roof structure over their operation, not have it within a wholly enclosed
That
building.
was gonna be my next question. So if they put a roof, then Durham will say, okay.
Yes.
I have a question.
Mhm.
If everybody wants to check on page 43, there's a section. Okay, it says here, scope of work for compliance with Miami-Dade. There's 4 items here. However, it seems that the applicant is only complying with 1. It's indicated that they give him 4 options to come into compliance. I see here the list, what were the options? Why did they choose and apply on only 1? And I also like to know,
I didn't hear what you said. You said, why did they?
why did they only choose to only comply with 1 of what Durham's is requiring? Because they had 4 that they were requiring before anything can be done. And we know what the options are, but I like to know the feasibility of all their options, because if Durham has to approve
And they want them to have all of these in compliance, but they're only really doing one out of the four. And we're recommending that without having all four that Miami-Dade has asked.
If I could provide
think
some
there's a
further
slight-
clarification,
Yeah, there's a slight misunderstanding.
this application is strictly for the roof. The roof portion of it, which is related to the variance itself. That's the first thing that has to go through this particular review, and we have to have a recommendation from your board in order to take it before the commission for that to be considered. The other three items are still conditions that they have to apply to, but it doesn't relate to the
The
variance.
height.
It doesn't
Okay.
relate to the variance.
But we're also not talking about the same thing though. Based off the document that I'm looking at. And the board member correct me if I'm wrong. She's trying to ask, and I was gonna ask the same thing, if there are 4 potential solutions to this issue. And ISL favors option number 4. Can we go through option 1, 2, and 3 and understand why those were also not options and why option 4 is the
Those
correct option?
particular options are
Yeah.
being taken in consideration as it relates to the site plan and the development agreement. Right now, you're analyzing specifically for the roof structure itself for the variance of the height.
But we're not though.
Yes, you are. You're taking up item 1. Item 1 is strictly the variance.
No. I get that. But if we determine that something within this options of 1 through 4 is something that is unfavorable, then they don't even have to go up to the 42 feet.
The other items are applicable as it relates to the site plan.
Right? I get that. We're looking at right now, if they can go up 50 feet.
Right.
That's what we're looking at.
Right.
Right.
Correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. They would only need to go up to 50 feet if they choose one of these options from this list of 4. And the one that applies to that is number 4, not number 1, 2, or 3. So theoretically, if they were to choose number 1 on the list of 4, they don't need the variance.
That is not true.
So look at the paper.
No. They have to comply with all 4
4.
of these things.
They have to comply.
They're
with
not
all 4.
complying with 1, they're complying with 4.
And only
and-
one of them affects our zoning.
Yeah, only one is a request for a variance to get them to that point, because these are all requirements that Durham has.
Can I read this?
Of these,
Can I read the sentence that's on page 42?
yes,
The sentence says, under a proposed settlement agreement to certain lawsuit, Durham has given ISL 4 options to bring the facility into compliance with chapter 24-47 of Miami-Dade Code. That does not say they require all 4. It says they've given them the option of 4. So unless I'm reading this incorrectly, that directly says they can choose between one of these 4 to bring themselves into compliance with 24-47. And it says in the last sentence of that same paragraph, ISL favors option number 4 and wants to pursue it for a reason, meaning they don't favor 1, 2, or 3. So what I'm asking is why don't they favor 1, 2, or 3? And that's on page 42.
I saw it.
Am I reading that incorrectly?
That's what it says.
I agree, Mr. Barnes, but I could see where it's probably phrased wrong, but they obviously would need to comply with all 4.
I'm just going off legally
Yeah,
what
but
it
it
says
says
in the
there.
document. The document says they have the option of 1, 2, 3, or 4. They
Yeah,
chose or favoring option number 4. I'm trying to understand what's going on with option 1, 2, or 3, because those are other options that also could have been favored instead. See what I'm saying? It's in the document.
because if it
Second
was an
paragraph.
option, it wouldn't address the contamination problem, but they don't have their equipment under a roof. So I'm thinking options was just not a good word to use in that.
I'm not a lawyer,
Yeah.
and Chairman
I get what
Guerrero,
you're
they
saying.
absolutely
I
can.
get what
I'm just
you're
trying, I'm going based off what I'm reading, and I'm just trying to get clarification on that.
Yeah, it seems like they have an option of a 4 thing.
Chairman Guerrero,
Mhm.
I believe that's a question for the applicant to address the board and see if they can provide some more clarification for that. I certainly understand the concern, discrepancy, and possibly even confusion. I'll let the applicant address this question before I try to explain where I think the confusion may be. I think the other items are relating to stormwater, but that's a question for the applicant to address. If you may go to the podium and try to address
Sure, I have it here. Take a look at that.
One, two, and three are part of the things that we have to do in order to get all the permits from Durham, which is the stormwater management system. We have to do that, right, Rudy? The concrete slab, the underground sewage holding tank is provided, and
Listen, it appears that all of these are requirements that Durham has put on them. I did see this language over here, and I'm not in agreement with the way that that's worded, because two of these in particular talk about the building height and the need for the building to prevent contamination. The first one says, the facility is required to be brought in compliance, provides an option to process ferrous scrap on a concrete surface and under a roof. The second one says that a 12-inch thick concrete slab, with the exception of a 12 by 18 green area with an underground 1,200-gallon domestic sewage holding tank, is provided. Therefore, the existing facility already complies with one of the requirements that all scrap metal processing be performed on a concrete surface. They already did that already. They're already doing it. The next one says, in order to comply with that chapter, a new metal building is proposed where all ferrous scrap metal will be processed. The new open-sided building, blah, 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 with overhangs, blah, 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 accommodate large operating machines, which is what we're talking about. And the last one says the existing French drains stormwater drainage system is proposed to be abandoned, utilizing retrofitted and new catch basins. That means they need to install some other systems and new solid pipes leading to an underground sediment detention tank, from where the treated stormwater is proposed to be discharged to the existing canal. They have to do all of these things to reduce the contamination that's going to go to the canal. That includes the building, the concrete slab, and this underground tank thing that's gonna catch sediment and prevent it from going into the, it's not one or the other. They've got to do all of this. I can't explain why this previous page, they say one of four options, because it appears all these options are what Durham is asking for.
Exactly. That's why I questioned it, because it's all four.
Yeah.
They have to
And
do
this
all
was
four,
attached to
but
the
it's the
package.
one option that relates to the height of the building. That's
But they're
why
not
they come
connected.
before us for the variance. And that is the first item that is before you right now.
Okay.
Yes.
Please.
Hi, my name is Rudy Fine, and I'm an environmental consultant. I used to work for Durham. So, these are all interconnected, yes, they are. So you can't proceed with 2, 3, or the rest of them unless the roof height is approved, because without that, everything else goes away. They can't, the whole plan is dead. So that's why this is like the first step. I'm preparing and have already completed what's called a Class 6 application for the stormwater. There's a document required in there that says, that's asking for evidence that the roof height is approved and that there are no zoning violations to the city of Opa-locka. Durham wants to see that in writing. So I'm waiting for that letter or this approval to get a copy of it to be able to then continue with the process of applying for the stormwater system. So they are all tied together, but can't do one without the other. And really, the roof height is pivotal.
Thank you.
Second question for you. I don't know who can answer this. This might be a question for the applicant. This new building that's proposed with the increased height for the new machinery. Can you give the board some more background on the necessity of the new equipment that then requires the elevated roof structure?
Come on. They're using it now.
My understanding, it's not new equipment. This is the existing equipment. So they have like a crane that
Mhm.
lifts up the pieces of metal and stacks them or moves them around. The height of that crane is why the roof needs to have all that equipment on the roof. You need a really tall roof. It has to be at least 50 feet high. Actually, I think it's 47. But the engineer, he was supposed to be here tonight. I'm the environmental consultant, but the engineer has the plan. They're at Durham. They're under review. And there's a list of all the equipment there that's available. There's forklifts and the cranes, et cetera, that Durham wants a list of everything that's going to be there and it's going to be maintained there, like oil changes or repair or any of that, that needs to keep it going. So the equipment is existing equipment.
So it's being used right now on the
It's being
site,
used right now.
on the site,
Yes,
just without a roof.
just without a roof, right? And all the material is exposed. And that's the problem because rainwater, contact with that creates a leachate. And the leachate is iron. There's already some issues there because it used to be an old landfill, but they don't, it doesn't need to get worse. Durham's trying to get the whole area to improve.
Okay, so I'll tell you what my confusion, my ultimate confusion comes in. The equipment's already being used. It's being used out in the open, right?
Right.
And so theoretically, if they were to come up with a stormwater management program that does not require a roof structure, then we don't have to deal with the variance, correct?
I can answer that. There are no sewers available in Cairo Lake, so that's one of the big issues.
Mhm.
Otherwise, they could just connect to that and treat it and be done. So they have developed or designed the engineer.
Sorry, sir, if you could speak directly into the mic so everyone can
Okay.
hear you.
The engineer has designed a very specialized stormwater management system that has no contact with the groundwater, which is not usual. Usually the rainwater infiltrates into the ground because the ground there is so contaminated. We don't want to add more of that. So they've isolated the water. It's going to go through treatment and to be tested and then into the canal. And so that's the stormwater system that's proposed. Durham has the plans for it.
I heard you, man.
Okay.
Are these,
Right on it. Okay.
excuse me, are these new Durham regulations or was there an not in compliance thing going on, or are these new Durham regulations?
Not new, but each site, this is very unique setting. And again, you see the canal, it's mostly all the properties are leaching in underground into the canal. So they've even thought of putting a slurry wall or sheet piling to try to prevent that, but the modeling shows that it'll just go around it. So you have to try to stop it at the source where each property, most of them have the infiltration storm systems. So that water is going right down into all that fill and mixing in and moving.
Mhm.
This facility already has like a 12-inch concrete slab across the entire site. And it has a stormwater system, but it's clogged. It doesn't really infiltrate good. So that's why you see that it's going to be abandoned. And this new system is going to be installed, which is kind of a state-of-the-art thing. It's not the cheapest way to go. It's really pretty extensive.
Thank you. Any more questions?
My whole problem that I have with this is the contamination and the pollution that we're being exposed. We're not thinking about the residents. This is only business right now. And if they would follow the guidelines or be in compliance with Miami-Dade, I'm pretty sure that everybody in that area probably is not in compliance, However, we need to do better because this is eventually going to affect the residents if it's in the water, in the canal. That's my concern right now. Maybe if they,
If I may, this is to stop that.
I'm sorry,
This is designed to stop that at this facility. No infiltration. It'll be covered up. And whatever outside parking lot water, even that is not going to be allowed to go through the fill. It's going to go, it's isolated and treated. It's going to be just rainwater. So that's the first step in that whole Cairo Lane alley that this facility probably will be an example.
I have a question. You have a heightened roof. Rain is coming down, but let's just say the rain is coming from east to west. So now it's not coming straight down, it's coming at a slant, like how big is the roof and where are the materials? Is the material right in the middle or
And it has.
are we
preventive-
concerned
it has
about the
knee
width
walls.
of the roof?
I'm sorry, it has knee walls all around it
Okay,
to disallow rainwater from coming in.
okay.
Any other questions? Do we have any public hearing open? Nobody is on.
Chair, at the moment, we don't have any public comments. However, I do see that we do have 3 people virtually. No? Okay, thank you.
So no. All right, public hearing closed. Can we get a motion on the variance?
I motion to approve the roof.
I second it.
Roll call.
Board Member Barnes,
No.
Board Member Smith,
Yes.
Board Member Dominguez,
no.
Board Member Mata,
Yes.
Chairman Guerrero,
Yes.
item passed.
Item number 2.
Item number 2 is a resolution of the Planning and Zoning Board of the City of Opa-locka, Florida, recommending approval of the site plan for the construction of a proposed metal building with a height of 50 feet on the property located at 12705 Cairo Lane and identified by folio number 08-2128-003-0530 in the I-4 zoning district, providing for an effective date.
As far as the site plan, would you like the?
So I'm not sure I understand. The question or a resolution on this?
Any questions for the applicant on the site plan?
It's just a procedural thing. Since it's
Okay.
yeah, that's all. You gotta come up every time there's another item, but I don't think there's any questions, so I think it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we got the gist of it. All right, staff, you recommend approval? Okay.
Mr. Lee, can you please say that in the mic for me, please? Thank you, sir.
Procedurally. Gerald Lee, Planning and Community Development Department zoning official. You know what it was that we were asking for with the variance, the same site plan, but this is to construct that building that's going to cover the site. It becomes extremely important to address the contamination in the area. Staff recommends approval based on what the site plan is. And again, it is in compliance with what Durham is requiring this applicant to do.
I have a question, Mr. Lee.
Yes, sir.
because I know that, like Ms. Dominguez said, in Carroll Lane, you have a lot of that leaching going on, a lot of the same type of businesses. Is this something that is gonna come up every time they're due for license renewal? That's why I asked if it was a new Durham regulation. Because it seems to me that we're gonna be facing a lot of variances with because, everybody's gonna be, that is supposed to do this is gonna have the same issue.
Well, the way it is, and let me just start here. It is not new requirements, but Durham is enforcing. The process in the city has improved, and so more businesses are going through the correct process to be addressed. And as they come forward, we have the challenge of dealing with how we're going to address how the business operates in this district. Okay, so with Durham having an opportunity now to enforce environmental conditions, we've got to come up with better ways to handle it. Now, eventually, it may be the best thing for, in that area, all structures or all sites need to be covered by a roof, or that they make an indoor make that the operation is inside a wholly enclosed building or whatever. But that still remains to be seen. But the beginning of that process is addressing this particular one, so his equipment fits underneath that building to reduce contamination, particularly since they're right on the canal.
Yeah, because the equipment is pretty standard for that type of use.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So how many scrap metal companies are in that section in that area right now?
I don't have a count of how many, but probably a quarter of all of the businesses may be scrap metal facilities. The others are typically used parts, junkyards, salvage operations for cars, trucks, that kind of thing. So the scrap metal isn't the highest use in the area. The majority of them are still junkyards and auto salvage operations.
But they still use equipment like that, and they
Not the
still-
same. It's not the same. What they do is they stack wrecked cars and they inventory parts, and then they sell to buyers based on what it is that they need. Scrap metal brings in scrap of all types, ferrous, non-ferrous, aluminums, whatever. Sometimes they scrap it, sometimes they just ship it out to a bigger scrap metal facility, and they get paid for what they have bought from people. So it's just an exchange. But in the interim, you got rainwater, you got the possibility for contamination.
So what is staff doing to making sure that everybody's in compliance with Miami-Dade? Because we're trying to make it better. So is staff actually going to these businesses to make sure that they're following the guidelines with Miami-Dade? Because you stated that they were cited or many times because of not being in compliance. So what is staff doing to
The
make sure?
licensing, I would say this, the licensing process is the process that begins to address who has complied, who has done the legwork and done the things that Durham has required. And if they haven't, sometimes they ask for more time and they go to an EQC board or whatever to get more time and then to get their ducks in a row. So it's a process. That process is what is bringing people not only to us, but to you.
So eventually everybody will be in
That is,
compliance.
that's
I
our
think what you're
belief, that's our
saying
hope.
is, why don't they just all get into compliance now?
Yeah,
That's why I was wondering.
Because
when they'll
what if
come
a
in this
license
board.
is not due until another 5 years? We still have contamination going into the water.
If I could add to this conversation, the city of Opa-locka for about 4 or 5 years now has been under a consent decree with Miami-Dade County, specifically with Durham and with water and sewer. And it has to do with the inspections relating to businesses that were not in compliance. We're actually under a directive that we cannot issue business licenses unless they comply with Dade County's requirements. So Dade County is the first area where a lot of these particular businesses have to come into compliance in order to receive their approval from Durham. And once they receive that approval from Durham, we, the city of Opa-locka, can issue our business license. Otherwise, they will have to shut down. They will have to cease operations. And that's where we're coming to as it relates to a lot of businesses operating within the city of Opa-locka. And it's because of that consent decree, we have to go through this review process. Just about every business in the city of Opa-locka, and even some that may not be in the city, but because they receive their infrastructure or some type of supportive service from the city of Opa-locka, they all will have to go through this review process. It's a tedious process. Everybody, trust me, we've heard all the barking about it, you know, in relationship to people having to go through this process. It's a necessary evil, but it is going to make things a lot better going down the road. Now, as it relates to this particular project, the reason that it is before you is because of the variance relating to the roof. They could have made the other improvements just through going through a simple permitting process, but because they're building a new structure, that has what brought this particular item before you. As it relates to some of the other uses, and we're seeing new uses occur within this particular area of our city. Not too long ago, you just recently approved to allow for logistics and truck parking operation to come into this particular portion of the city. There are uses that can still be done within a structure or with a cover that is 20 feet high. If it's 20 feet high or less, that item is not going to come before you. But they're still going through a process in order to meet the Durham requirements, as well as being able to be a licensed operation within the city of Opa-locka. So this process will continue to go forward. If that new business or the existing business requires to have a higher structure because of the nature of its operation, that item most likely will come before you, and you will basically have this similar type of discussion in relationship to that particular application.
I'd like to just say to the other board members that the other thing that you have to think about when making decisions on projects like this, as we all know, that there is the potential for future businesses to have this, is think about what it means architecturally for the city. To understand that if we're making a variance in this area of the neighborhood, we're increasing vertical density from what it is around now, which is about 20-25 feet. We're doubling that. And so should someone come in, understand that the scale of that neighborhood might increase. Also understand that we do have certain ideological and aesthetic guidelines that adhere to those Moorish guidelines of the original city planning that was done. And how do we approve new structures that may not have any tie to the historic relevance of the city, which is also important when we think about some of these very simple generic roof structures that could have a bit more architectural character. And then the last thing I'll say is there are many ways to mitigate stormwater and deal with water retention. A lot of those ways are far more expensive than a simple roof structure.
Yes.
But with some of those processes, they do increase the viability of Opa-locka as a more sustainable area through ways such as wetlands or cisterns, and these other type of systems that actually exist, which are definitely more robust and cost a lot more money than just building a shed structure. I just hope that we're all aware that there are alternatives than what are put in front of our faces. Just those alternatives cost more money. And one of the things that we know about Opa-locka is a lot of people don't like spending money. So just be aware of those things I'm sorry. That would be literally city of Opa-locka type stuff. But what I'm saying is what we're looking at in front of us, absolutely a one-off situation, but understand that there could be more that come by that have similar circumstances of we have this machinery is huge. We need a new structure. We found precedent already just building something at 40 feet that allows us to continue our current operations uninterrupted while not truly investing in what it means to be in Opa-locka is a viable option. Just want to make that clear.
What do you propose if it's costly and it's not affordable? How long have you guys been in business there?
I believe 10 years.
Is it really their fault that they don't have? Well, I guess my real question is, should Durham or the county be responsible as well as the owners of those businesses to construct something? I mean, those businesses,
Well,
some
I
of
got
those
you.
businesses have been there for years.
Well, I can say my own philosophical answer to that is part of the reason why people come to this area is because they don't have the same restrictions of other places. So if you know you can get things passed faster and get your business up quicker and get money faster than other places that are more restrictive, you're going to go to the place that saves you more money. So how much leeway do you get by saying
Is
if
it-
I went somewhere else, I would have to spend more money, but Opa-locka won't make me spend as much, so I'm gonna go to Opa-locka.
Well, it
see what I'm
seems
saying?
like Durham has the problem, so. And it's all, these are not new, from what we understand, these are not new things. They're just being enforced.
Right, and I'm saying, say for instance, they want to do this in Coral Gables,
Mhm.
they would have never got to this point because the first bid would never been allowed.
But we already have the problem, so how do we deal with the problem that we have
Right.
now?
The way you did going forward is you say we're going to start enforcing these things so that people don't continue to make exceptions. And what we're doing is continuing to make exceptions.
But we're
So
only making one, we're making an exception to just heighten the roof
again,
that's not already there.
again, what I'm saying is we can make the exception for international scrap, right? That doesn't mean that other people won't come with the exact same issue in the future, which means there's already
They've already
precedent.
said other
Right,
people
right,
are
right,
gonna.
which
And
means
then
that-
it has to go to the
which means there's
commission
precedent set. for
and
that
they have to
continue
make the
happening.
final approval.
When in reality, what you could do is find more ecological options that do exist, but are far more expensive. And I want to emphasize, I recognize they are far more expensive. I'm just saying, if we go around these routes, I just want to be on the record of saying there are other options that exist that don't require variances, that then forces businesses to operate as though they care about the city, as opposed to being here, getting funds because some of the things we have are a bit more lax than other areas of Miami-Dade County.
Mhm.
That's all.
I got a question for the applicant. Have you guys thought of different ways as opposed to just doing the roof? Did you guys come up with any other ideas?
Yes, I mean, treatment of the stormwater, no roof, let the leachate hit the ground and go through a system of treatment, chemical treatment, flocculation and maintenance of that. And those, I can tell you from experience, they fail. They have to be maintained and you depend on the operator to do that. And it's very specialized. You know, you have to sample, you have to make sure the filters are clean, and it's just an ongoing process. And if you get a big rainstorm, it can overwhelm the system even, and you still have pollution going out. So, this is really a simple solution. It's actually that property or that section. If you look at it as a little slice of Cairo Lane, will be completely capped. It'll cap any infiltration of water. So the underlying, really the problem is the underlying fill. That was used to be Minton's dump. That's historic from the 1980s, probably shouldn't have been allowed from the beginning. So, but this will prevent that from moving the contamination that's already there historically into the canal. If everybody else follows suit, you'll be able to cap the whole dump, which will improve, the water quality. This would be like a start.
And Durham didn't give you as the, other options.
There aren't very many.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? This public hearing closed. We get a motion.
Dang, I forgot one.
This has nothing to do with the applicant or anything. I just want to make a comment to the board members. And I want to thank board member What is it? Oh, your Barnes, okay. Board Member Barnes for, making the point regarding they could have gone through a different route. I just want to make it clear that, the decisions we make, it's under our names. And there was a comment made in a commissioners meeting that we're just approving anything. We're not really paying attention and we're just, and that really bothered me because, I take this in any kind of board that I'm in, I take it serious. So for, someone to say, oh, we're just approving anything, they're not checking, I think we really have to pay attention what is brought to us and really study and make sure that we're making the right decision because, yeah, we can approve it, but once it goes to the commission, they just say, no, we're not going to approve it. It's not what we want for Opa-locka. So I just wanted to put that on the record. Thank you.
Well, shame on whoever said that,
Well,
because that means that we're spending time here and they don't appreciate what we're doing. So whoever said that, shame on them. But nevertheless, we have a business here that's been there for 10 years. It is not their fault that things have not been documented or people just, like you just said, and just let them do whatever they want. And at some juncture, I could argue if I were on their feet that they need money. So now they're enforcing all the rules. If there's a rule, it just should always be enforced. I think about being a business person and being in a space for 10, 20, 30 years, and all of a sudden I get citations. What about the companies that can't even afford to, this is not a small expense to add a roof, add the height, do infill, like this is not a little bit of work. So what about even the people that bought property thinking that this was okay? There was nothing. Durham had to approve it at some point. You got to go through Durham. You must go through
yeah,
Durham.
but Durham has been enforcing the law. It hasn't been that long. They just started maybe a couple of years ago that they started requiring Durham. And before they got a
That's
license, they had to
true.
go through Durham.
That's not
because-
true.
And it has really, sometimes it has to do with the owners of a property that are not in compliance with Durham. And the owner, or not the owner, the tenant is being cited or is the one that has to pay for it because they have had agreements with Durham where they say, okay, yeah, we're gonna fix it. We're gonna do a line for the water to go through, but then they don't follow through.
That's Durham's problem. Like
No,
Durham.
no, it's really when the owner doesn't follow through
Well, if
with
you
the
don't-
agreement that they have. I know for a
Right,
fact
if
it
you
happened
don't
to a
follow
business.
through, then there should be some curation or some citation at that time, not 10 years later.
No, but they've
How
given
long
them
have you guys been cited? So 2000, so from 2011,
recently, they've had citations.
did you not have to go through Durham to get a business license? I mean, I have businesses that I don't know, they don't seem to play. Like we can't move forward until Durham approves certain things and we have to adhere to it. So they've gotten a business license at some juncture and had to go, they cannot function without Durham. So Durham at some point came and said, here's your certification. You can move on with business. Now, recently, you're getting cited. These aren't new rules. So now you have a situation where you have, I mean, I would consider, I don't know them personally, but they've been here for 10 years. The city of Opa-locka doesn't find them. And it could be that they're not paying attention. But what do you, like, where's the balance? Where's the balance? Or maybe we should be doing approval based on keeping the city of Opa-locka at the forefront. And maybe we should be mandating that Durham builds that wall or some other infrastructure. Can you imagine I pay $4 million for a building, Durham says okay, and then later down the line I'm being fined and I have to add another $1 million of costs? So while I think we've got to find a middle ground. Or what do? Just shut all the businesses down over there because nobody can afford? That's stuff that should be done when you're buying a property. Here are the requirements. And if you can't meet the requirements, then you don't buy. So when the title company sends over to the business owner or the realtor or whoever, those things should be there. It's stuff like simple things like paint. I did not know the city of Opa-locka required a permit for painting. It seems so small and minute, but where do you go to find that information?
Well, that's a bigger fish in a different.
Right, so
That-
now we're stuck in between, somebody bought a business, they've been functioning fine for years. Durham sees that there's a problem because they've already, from what I understand, have looked at building some type of structure which didn't work because the contamination would still go around. So now we have business owners that are willing to pay the cost. Is the city helping you with the cost? Is the county helping you with the cost?
I apologize. Could you please go to the podium and make sure it's on the record? Thank you.
We have to pay for all the costs.
What are the costs that you're incurring?
I'm sorry, say it again?
What are the costs that you're incurring for this fixing of
How much is gonna cost us? A lot,
what? Give us a roundabout.
around more than $500,000.
So now we have business owners that are gonna incur costs, or we just say no, they shut down because there's no other. If you're saying that it's gonna be very costly,
I think you're getting into a real slippery slope right now, because I can ask these two gentlemen, how many of the people that work in your place live in Opa-locka?
6.
How many people work at your actual place?
Okay, board,
See what I'm saying?
you're starting to get
Like-
into an area that's not concerning the
No, no, no.
application that's in front of you.
Mr. Gray,
I think you
I'm
need to
aware,
move forward with
Mr. Gray, Mr.
the
Gray, I'm
areas
aware
that
is
is
the reason
relating
why I
to
said
the
that.
site plan. Areas related to
aware.
the site plan.
I'm aware that is the reason why I said that, because we are getting off task. And if we're asking questions about how much they make, I can easily say how much of that money stays in the city while you have a business here,
So
which is the more important thing. So
I
I'm
would
gonna
encourage
stand
you to
by.
move previous question because you've pretty much exhausted all the questioning at this time.
well, I'm done.
Doesn't bother me at all, but ultimately the thing that matters is how much money stays in the city. And so if we want to continue on the slope, we can continue to ask these types of questions. I don't need to ask these types of questions, but if we want to play this game, we can. We
I
approve
think
play
those
this shit
types
on
of
stage.
questions should have been asked though when they brought the business to the.
I don't
city
think
of
they have to be,
Opa-locka.
because if you're a smart business person, you go to the place that allows you to pay the less, make the most money and continue on with your day. It takes somebody to come in and decide, you know what, I want to put a stop to these things and make stuff better. Somebody got to make the decision. There's 5 of us on the board. Somebody can make the move and go ahead and put it forward, and then we'll take a vote and find out how it goes. The first thing passed. Let's see how the second thing goes and the third thing.
Were you given alternatives on choice other than building the structure?
Well, the thing is, we need the structure in order for that water not to hit and bring more contamination to the site. We are doing this because we want to stop that. We want to stop the contamination.
So no.
Huh?
Yeah, you're not free to explore other avenues to solve the same issue.
Well, what do you think is other avenues?
No, I'm talking specifically from Durham's instructions to you.
Did they give you different, did they say, oh,
Uh-uh.
you could do this, or this? Like, did they give you options? I think that's what you're asking.
That's what you were explaining, Rudy, right?
If I could just bring the board a little bit closer. That information was provided before you. There was 4 points that was discussed previously. One of those points dealt with the variance, which you have already addressed. The other 3 points are things related to the site plan. So we're at the point now where these are the options that have been placed before you. If there are other options that are out there, that's something that could be considered, but you still have to take care of the business that's in front of you right now, which is related to the site plan.
Mr. Chair, if I may make a comment, this came up earlier in the meeting and the applicant did address some of this as well as Mr. Gay has addressed it. I believe the wording used in the letter, it appears a couple of times in the packet. I don't see a date on here, but it's addressed to Mr. Gay from International Scrap. Part of it was read into the record earlier. The copy I'm looking at is on page 25 of 79 and 26, where they refer to the 4 options from Miami-Dade. And they say a partial copy of the mandate with the four options is mentioned. I think that was improper language, incorrect language that caused the confusion when we started this discussion on the variance. I don't see those as options. The four bulleted points on the next page, the first one addresses the height. The other items in there address the stormwater and the contamination issues that we've been talking about. So I think the first step was putting a roof over here will help reduce, mitigate some of the contamination problems that are on site. The other three bulleted items are addressing how they're going to deal with the stormwater and further contamination that may be released from the site as a result of the operations that are there. So I think that letter mischaracterized the four options. It's not like you can put a roof on here, not put a roof on here, do the drainage, not do the drainage. These are the requirements, as I read this, for them to move forward and satisfy Durham and reduce the contamination from this site in the city of Opa-locka. So that's my understanding of all the applications here.
Yeah, what I was trying to get to is some of the board members are, from what it seems to me, if I understand correctly, is the aesthetics of having to put a roof in our city, which is not, so what I'm trying to make a point is that as far as Durham is concerned, the roof is the only option, the way I see it. Because they didn't say you could put a different type of cistern or wetland or whatever to do the same thing, even though it's more costly. That's what I wanted to clarify. The applicant, as far as I understand, has no other choice than to ask for the variance and go put the roof or stop doing the business that they've been doing for 10 years.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
Mr. Chair, members of the board, you've already taken action on the variance. We're on the site plan. I would ask that you make a decision as it relates to the site plan.
I asked for a motion.
Well, can you finish? I want to hear what you have to say.
That basically, that was my point. I mean, I'm trying to establish if they had a choice to go other avenues, but as far as I understand it, they didn't.
Chairman, they
Well, they
did.
do.
They did.
As
They
far as
do.
Durham is concerned.
Yes, it just costs a lot more money. That is all, that's literally all it is.
But I get it, but
But who
Durham
would
gave
incur
them
that cost?
specific instructions.
Even,
From the
even
way
with,
I
look,
understand.
before he gets on this soapbox and targets, we can absolutely move along to the site plan. But the thing that I want to make clear, even though we've already approved it,
Is your mic on?
there are, yeah, it's on.
Okay.
There are other options besides the roof structure that was there, okay? Those other options, as the environmentalist explained to everyone, require far more maintenance, require far more attention, and those things cost money. They do. Having somebody there on staff all the time costs money. Having the requisite materials, porous materials, retention ponds, all these things cost money. The simplest solution is the roof structure that they have proposed. Because that's a one-stop thing, it's done.
But as far as.
But
Durham-
why-
My only issue, which is why we're already past it now, was the issue of how it becomes a part of the architectural character of the city. But that's nothing to do with the site plan. So if y'all want to expedite, we can move along to that part. It just requires somebody to make a motion.
I motion that we approve the site plan.
Second,
Was it second by board member?
Claudia.
Claudia.
It was
Bye.
second.
Who's second? You did?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Okay, board member Barnes,
No.
board member Smith,
Yes.
board member Dominguez,
No.
board member Mata,
Yes.
Chairman Guerrero,
yes,
item passed.
get item number 3.
The final item on the agenda this evening is a resolution of the Planning and Zoning Board of the City of Opa-locka, Florida, recommending approval of the development agreement for the construction of a metal building with a proposed height of 50 feet on the property located at 12705 Cairo Lane and identified by folio number 08-2128-003-0530 in the I-4 zoning district, providing for an effective date.
Just have a quick question for Mr. Lee. Projects like this, how closely does the city care about adhering to architectural character?
Repeat that, please.
Projects like this,
Yes.
how much does the city care about adhering to architectural character?
Architectural character in the I-4 zoning district.
Uh-huh.
I think the greatest emphasis in the city for architectural character is usually in the mixed use districts, the downtown, where major overlays are, where it involves residential and commercial use. There hasn't been a whole lot of standards per se as far as architectural things in the I-4 zoning district. And maybe that should be something that we consider as we go forward. But currently, the majority of that area is for an industrial use that really hasn't been addressed architecturally.
Okay.
Because some of the properties don't have large buildings. They have like an office space, the storage racks, and then a concrete slab where they do the repairs and removal of parts to be able to categorize and catalog.
Okay, so my next question,
Yes,
how close is the nearest housing development to this business?
the farthest distance, probably. This is on the canal. The first building is probably, if you go east,
It's like 4 blocks away.
yeah, Alexandria Drive and
Alexandria
north,
Drive.
and north.
Yeah, it's like
And
maybe
north.
4 or 5 blocks away.
A little more than that, but okay, okay.
And now,
Within that range.
yeah, and now this building that's being built will be seen from there because now it's twice the height of the buildings in the area.
Yes, it will.
Right, because it's no longer the 20 feet threshold, it's now almost 50 feet. So if I'm 4 blocks away, I can easily see that this is now the tallest thing in the area.
Very close.
So if it's the tallest thing in the area, does architectural character matter?
The architectural character is industrial. And it doesn't reflect any Moorish architecture for an
I'm
industrial
just saying, if the
site.
tallest thing in this area is about to be an industrial building, would you want that to adhere to the character of the city, or that's not a thing that we should really harp on?
I don't think it's what we're going to hop on at this time without standards,
Okay, just asking.
without standards.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Is there anything with reference to the development agreement that staff would like to allude other than what we've already talked about?
Nothing major, because this is not a new business. It's not going to involve any major changes as far as the use is concerned. It is a structure mandated by the requirements of Durham for mitigation of environmental issues. Okay, let me just say this. This area was a lake probably 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and it became a landfill. So what's underground, it will probably be on the edge of becoming a super fund to do anything other than what's there now. Okay, to clean it up, you'd have to extract and then to put clean fill to a tune of beyond most capacities. Okay, now that's something that may happen in the future. But currently what the city has done is just allowed junkyards to operate there because of the known contamination that may be underground. Thank you.
If I may add, getting back to the item that is before you, which is the development agreement. Within our form, we do require that due to construction of this new facility that's being built, that the owners or the owner's representative try to reach out and do some type of marketing for the construction phase to hire local residents to be a part of the project. That is within our development agreement. And we speak to that. And also the development agreement speaks to the timeline as it relates to this whole process taking forth. I know they want to move as aggressively as possible so they can get this operation moving forward once again. So staff does recommend approval for the development agreement as well.
Questions? Public hearing open, nobody? Public hearing closed, we have a motion.
I think I have a comment or a question to maybe address your concern. Can we approve it with a stipulation? Or is that even important in this area with a Moorish design?
You can say stipulation, no motion.
Well, before I make it a motion, that would just start, if, let's just say the next person wants to do the same thing, we could start having some standard, not really, yeah, standards and uniform, I want to say uniform. Which I think is partly your concern. But there's a 20-foot building that wasn't there, the homeowner of 30 years now can see this. Is it a obstruction? Like, is it an ugly view? Or do I want to see something that looks like the city of Opa-locka with the Moorish design? Or is this an area that we're just, from what I understand, because of the land and the previous landfill, we would never go and just tear the whole area down and build houses without correcting the problem underneath, which is very extensive. So this will forever be probably zoned I-4. So are we concerned about a Moorish design, or? I just don't know. I go to a like.
They said they're not.
We can recommend.
It's a scrap metal.
It's just gonna be.
I don't know that if
With
I go
walls,
to
it's not gonna
that
be-
area that I'm looking for Moorish design either.
Yeah, but the part that he made a good. He stated that the area where there's apartments or houses, they're gonna be able to see this, this big roof. I don't know if they can put something on the side, I don't know, but he made a point regarding what residents that are on the side of the apartments that are gonna be able to see this new roof. What is it that they're gonna see? I mean, it's gonna be 50 feet high, so.
I'm gonna make a motion to approve it.
I'll second.
Motion by Board Member Smith and second by Chairman Guerrero. Okay, Board Member Barnes,
No, thank you.
Board Member Hibbert Smith,
Yes.
Board Member Dominguez.
No,
Board Member Mata,
Yes.
Chairman Guerrero,
Yes.
item passed.
Any other thing? Other items, staff?
No, we have fully exhausted the agenda. Just. We do have some announcements though. We do have a groundbreaking activity for our historic city hall that will be taking place this Friday. We would like to encourage you all as representatives of our city on the planning and zoning board to come and be a witness of this groundbreaking activity.
What's the
Also,
scope? What's the scope?
I'm sorry,
What's the scope? on the historic
restoration
city
of
hall?
historic city
The
hall.
entire thing?
The entire thing.
Gotcha.
We will be bringing before you some rules and regulations as it relates to the board operations. We're finalizing that documentation right now, and we'll be presenting that to you at the next board meeting. I think those are the only two things. Ms. Hall, was there anything else that I may have missed?
Do you want to mention the upcoming workshops?
Oh, yes. We do have two workshops that are planned during this month. On June 21st, we will be having a residential paint palette workshop in order to look at colors that we would like to utilize to increase the opportunities for paint colors. We know our paints date back to the early 2000s.
1800s.
And a lot of their selections are not reflected within the market today. So we're going to be updating the paint palette for the residential areas. And we'll also be having a signage and commercial paint workshop on June the 28th. That is to basically look at updating our signage code relating to businesses and industrial areas to bring that whole process, which has been somewhat delayed, getting that back up to where it should be so that we can have the proper signage and the proper identifications as it relates to businesses. And there have been discussions relating to establishing a paint palette for commercial and industrial properties that will be separate and apart from the residential. As it stands right now, we basically have been utilizing the one paint palette for all properties within the city of Opa-locka. We're looking to introduce a new one for commercial and industrial properties that will be somewhat different from the residential areas, so that we're going through that particular workshop to initiate that particular process as well. So that will be taking place on June 28th. Both of the workshops will be at 6 o'clock. So we would like to urge you all and the public that are viewing online to come and partake of that particular activity. That is it.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. All right, Planning and Zoning Board meeting adjourned.
I would like to thank the board and the staff people for the time and for the hearing. Thank you.
You're welcome.